Denzil, a man whose nerves were usually held together by habit and hope, was pacing so fast he was nearly burning a hole in the linoleum. "Denzil, sit down," Albert's voice echoed. Denzil stopped and looked at the group gathered. There was Trigger, looking as vacant as a Sunday morning in a library. There was Boyke, looking smug despite the circumstances. And there was Sid, the cafe owner, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "I can't, Albert," Denzil groaned. "I've never been a character witness before. I'm worried. I think Dole's made a terrible mistake. Having us for here, it's like inviting the Manson family to dinner." "Don't be so dramatic," Trigger said, staring at a fly on the wall. "I'm going to tell them I hear voices." "Trigger, you're not the one on trial," Denzil hissed. "I know," Trigger replied simply, "but I still hear voices." Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was even grimmer. The Inland Revenue was a beast that didn't care about mange tout or lovely jubbly. They wanted their pound of flesh, and they wanted it in sterling. Dell and Rodney stood before the judge. The properties were gone. The cars were gone. The peacocks had probably been repossessed by a very confused bailiff. "Are there any mitigating circumstances?" their lawyer asked. Dell stepped forward, adjusting his tie. "Oh, yes. You must remember to tell them that we were slaves to detail, wouldn't you? Rodney, we made certain that we always got our checks off to the Inland Revenue on time." "Always," Rodney added, his voice cracking. "Fair dues," Dell whispered as the judge looked down at them. "They bounced, but they was always on time." The verdict was swift. Bankruptcy. They weren't going to prison, not yet, but they were being stripped of everything. The debt stood at $48,750 for pounds. It was a number that haunted those dreams. It wasn't just money, it was the price of his pride. Chapter 4: The Wrong Gentleman. Amidst the financial ruins, a personal tragedy struck. Uncle Albert, the man who had survived the Battle of the Atlantic only to be nearly killed by those cooking 1,000 times, had passed away. The funeral was a somber affair, or it should have been. The Trotters arrived at the cemetery, faces long and hearts heavy. "I feel bad, you know," Dell whispered to Rodney as they walked toward the open grave, "leaving him here on his own while we was all off globe-trotting." "He wasn't on his own, Dell," Rodney said. "He had Elsie. He was happy." They stood by the grave, listening to the vicar speak of a man named Bunny who had served in the RAF. "Bunny," Dell frowned. Why did he call him Bunny? "Well, that's what they called him in the RAF, didn't they?" A stranger next to them whispered. "Because his surname was Warren." Dell froze. He looked at the headstone. He looked at the grieving widow, who was definitely not Elsie Partridge. He looked at the photo of the deceased man who looked remarkably like Albert, but was missing the signature during the war beard. "Rodney," Dell hissed, his eyes wide. Is that a Spitfire on the coffin? Yeah, Rodney whispered back. We're at the wrong funeral. They retreated with the quiet dignity of two men who had just realized they were mourning a complete stranger. It was the perfect metaphor for their lives, showing up with good intentions, only to realize they were in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong dead relative. Chapter 5. New Management. Back at Nelson Mandela House, the flat felt smaller than it used to. The wallpaper was peeling, and the ghost of their millionaire lifestyle lingered in the form of a single, half-empty bottle of expensive cognac. The firm's been liquidated, Rodney said, staring at the kitchen table. Trotter's Independent Traders is no more. It's caput. No, 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 Dell said, his mind racing. The firm can go on trading. It's just that I've been disqualified from running it. That doesn't mean to say I can't work for it. He looked at Rodney, really looked at him. We need a new managing director, Dell mused. Someone young, someone enthusiastic, someone full of ideas. Rodney looked around the room. Who? The window cleaner. No, Rodney, you. Rodney's jaw dropped. Me? Dell, I can't run a company. I can't even run a bath without getting a headache. Legally, there is nothing to stop you, Dell insisted. You're clean. No bankruptcy, no disqualification. You'd be the boss. Rodney Trotter, managing director. And so, the power dynamic shifted. Within days, the local paper carried a small advertisement, Trotter's Independent Traders, now under new management. Managing Director, Rodney Trotter. Rodney took to the role with a terrifying level of seriousness. He started wearing a tie at breakfast. He spoke about executive stress and logistical paradigms. He even tried to listen to Mozart to unwind. Mozart's Symphony No. 38 in D major. Rodney explained to Trigger one evening in the flat. I find it helps me ease my executive stress. Trigger nodded slowly. Ain't there no words to this, Dave? No, Trigger, it's instrumental. Dell watched his brother with a mix of pride and annoyance. He was back in the game, even if he was technically just the staff. But the debt to the taxman still loomed. They needed a big score. They needed a miracle. And then the phone rang. Chapter 6. The Gold Rush. The studio lights were blinding. Jonathan Ross, a man who seemed to be made of charisma and expensive hair products, smiled at the camera. Welcome to Gold Rush, he announced, the fastest game show on TV. This is the show where you can win anything from £1 to 100,000 pounds. In the contestant's seat sat Derek Trotter. He had lied about his hobbies, claiming to love 16th century Italian Renaissance art instead of seeing what fell off the back of a lorry. And he had navigated the early rounds with the cunning of a street fox. He reached the final stages. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knockoff Swiss Army knife. For 50,000 pounds, Derek John